I never thought the day would come when my own child would break me in a way no stranger ever could. That morning began quietly, the sunlight pouring softly into the kitchen, the aroma of fresh bread and tea filling the air. I had bought the bread he requested yesterday, the one small thing he had asked for. I thought, maybe today he would smile, maybe he would say, "Thank you." I was wrong. "Mom, give me the bread!" he barked, more like a command than a request. I reached for it gently, and then, without warning, a cold splash of water hit my face. My own son had thrown it deliberately, laughing as it ran down my cheeks. For a moment I just stood there, frozen. The kitchen was silent except for his cruel laughter. The shock wasn't just in the water hitting me. It was in the betrayal, the disrespect, the complete lack of care for the woman who had raised him, fed him and sacrificed everything for him. I wanted to scream, to strike, to demand an apology, but I didn't. I stayed silent. I let the hurt sink deep, deeper than I ever let anyone see. And then I did something he would never expect. I quietly walked away from the table. I went to my room and closed the door, breathing in shallow gasps. Memories flooded me. All the nights I stayed awake nursing him when he was sick. All the lunches I packed. All the tears I had shed worrying about his happiness. All the little dreams I had nurtured for him. And now, all of that seemed meaningless. The boy I had loved so fiercely had spat on my love like it was nothing. That night I cried quietly. Not for him, but for myself. For the betrayal I never thought could come from my own flesh and blood. I realized that love without respect isn't love at all. It's vulnerability waiting to be crushed. By morning, I felt a clarity I hadn't known before. The boy who laughed at my face would no longer hold my life hostage. I didn't yell, I didn't argue, I didn't beg. I made a choice, one I knew would change everything. That afternoon, I canceled his card, emptied his account, and walked out of that house. Each step was heavy with grief, but also light with resolve. I was leaving behind not just a home, but a life that no longer honored me. I loved him enough to let him go, but I loved myself enough to reclaim my dignity. And as I closed the door behind me, I whispered to myself, "No one, not even your child, will ever make you feel worthless again." The first few days after leaving that house were some of the hardest I'd ever faced. I had nowhere to go, no familiar walls to rest against, and no child to demand my attention. Instead, I had silence, an uncomfortable, heavy silence that pressed against my chest like a weight. Yet, amidst the quiet, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: freedom. Not the childish, reckless freedom of rebellion, but the kind that comes from reclaiming your life, piece by piece, step by step. I realized that for too long, I had been living in a house that didn't see me, a home where love was taken for granted, and now I had the chance to rebuild for myself. I rented a small apartment downtown, furnished it modestly but thoughtfully, surrounding myself with warmth and light. I went back to my work, the career I had paused for years, sacrificing everything for my son's comfort. Slowly, I rediscovered the woman I had been before motherhood had consumed every piece of me. But even as I immersed myself in work and independence, a shadow lingered. I knew my son would feel the consequences of my actions soon. Children like him, spoiled and entitled, rarely understood the weight of their behavior until the world refused to bow to them. And it happened sooner than I expected. 3 days after I left, my phone rang. It was him. His voice, sharp, accusing, desperate, cut through the small apartment like a knife. "Mom, what did you do? Why did you take my money? Why are you doing this to me?" I listened silently. The shock in his voice was palpable. For the first time, he was seeing that actions have consequences. His tone, which had been so brazen and cruel at the breakfast table, was now cracked, pleading, begging for justification. I stayed calm. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I simply said, "You threw water in my face yesterday. You disrespected me in a way I will not allow in my life. You had your chance to learn respect. Now you have to face the consequences." There was a pause on the other end. I could hear him swallowing, his frustration building into anger, then dissolving into helplessness. "But I'm your son. You can't do this." I let the silence stretch. Sometimes silence speaks louder than words. Finally, I said softly, "I can, and I did. And you will learn what it feels like when the person you take for granted decides they're done being taken for granted." The line went dead. I hung up, leaning back in my chair, a strange mix of sadness and relief washing over me. I wasn't cruel. I wasn't vengeful. I was simply protecting myself and teaching a lesson he had refused to learn. For the first time, I felt power, not over him, but over my own life. I realized that sometimes love isn't about forgiveness. Sometimes it's about boundaries, courage, and walking away before your heart breaks completely. Little did I know, this decision would set off a chain of events neither of us could have imagined. Events that would test my resilience, my patience, and ultimately, my capacity to forgive. Days turned into a week, and I had settled into my new life. The apartment was quiet, filled with soft sunlight in the mornings and the comforting hum of my own thoughts at night. I cooked my own meals, listened to my favorite music, and slowly, almost imperceptibly, felt the tension in my shoulders begin to ease. But peace, I soon realized, comes with its own suspense. On the 8th day, there was a knock at my door. My heart jumped. I wasn't expecting anyone, not him, not anyone from that house. I opened the door cautiously. There he was, my son. His face was red, his eyes glistening with frustration, and something else I couldn't quite name. Guilt, fear, or just the shock of realizing the world didn't revolve around him anymore. "Mom," he said, voice trembling but angry, "you can't do this. You can't just take everything from me." I stepped aside, letting him in, but kept my distance. "I already did," I said quietly. "And I will do it again if you don't learn to respect me." He ran his hands through his hair, pacing the small living room. "I didn't mean to. I don't know why I threw the water. It was a joke." "Mom, come on!" A joke. A laughable, cruel excuse for cruelty. I looked at him calmly. "You think throwing water on me is a joke? The way you humiliated me yesterday, expecting me to cry, to beg, to forgive instantly, is that a joke too?" His steps faltered, but he shook his head. "I didn't mean it. I was angry. I was hungry. I don't know. Please I want my money back. I need it. I can't survive without it." I felt a pang of sorrow for the boy he used to be. The child who had clung to my neck, who had smiled so openly, who had believed in right and wrong. But that boy had disappeared somewhere along the line, replaced by someone cruel, entitled, and ungrateful. "I'm sorry," I said softly, almost whispering. "But this is the consequence of your actions. You disrespected me. You humiliated me. And now you must understand that respect isn't optional." He fell silent. The silence between us was thick, almost unbearable. I could see the wheels turning in his mind. For the first time, he realized the depth of my decision, that I had truly left, truly canceled the privileges he had taken for granted, and truly reclaimed my life. Finally, he looked at me with a mix of anger, fear, and something new, realization. "Mom, you're serious," he said, his voice quieter, more tentative. I nodded. "I've never been more serious in my life. And I hope one day you will understand why I had to do this. Not to hurt you, but to teach you what it means to respect the people who love you." He sank into a chair, his face buried in his hands. I watched him, feeling the strange mixture of sorrow and relief. Sorrow for the lost innocence, and relief that finally he might begin to learn a lesson he had refused to understand for years. Little did he know, the lesson had only just begun. The days that followed were tense, filled with quiet battles and unspoken challenges. He stayed, refusing to leave, like a storm hovering at my doorstep, testing my resolve. Every glance, every word, every gesture was a subtle reminder of the power he thought he still held. But the truth was, I had already taken control, not by force, but by reclaiming myself. He tried subtle manipulations at first. "Mom, come on, it's just a mistake. We're family. You don't have to be like this," he said one afternoon, leaning against the doorway. The casual tone was meant to disarm me, to make me doubt my decisions. But I didn't waver. "Family doesn't hurt each other," I replied quietly. "Family doesn't humiliate and disrespect the people who raised them. You need to understand that." He scoffed, rolling his eyes, but I saw the hesitation. The first crack in his arrogance had appeared. I could feel it, even as I tried to stay detached from the storm he brought. That evening, I decided to take a walk, a small act of reclaiming my freedom. The city was alive, buzzing with life, and I felt a strange thrill in walking alone, unafraid, unburdened by anyone else's expectations. But the suspense was there too, like a shadow following me. I knew he was thinking, planning, wondering how to regain control. And he did try. The next morning, I returned to find the mail scattered across the floor, bills thrown in every direction. I recognized the subtle warning. He was testing boundaries again, seeing if I would crumble under irritation. I looked at the mess calmly, almost amused. I picked up the papers, folded them neatly, and set them aside. He watched me silently from the couch, eyes dark with frustration. "Why aren't you angry?" he finally asked. "Because," I said slowly, meeting his gaze, "I have learned that anger gives power to those who don't deserve it. And I refuse to give you any more power over me." He shook his head, muttering under his breath, but I knew the truth. He was beginning to understand that the woman he had always controlled was no longer that person. Over the next few days, I found myself reflecting more and more on the lessons this painful experience had taught me. Resilience doesn't come from avoiding pain. It comes from facing it head-on and refusing to let it destroy you. Forgiveness doesn't mean letting someone off the hook. It means freeing yourself from carrying the weight of their cruelty. And trust, real trust, must be earned, not demanded. By the end of the week, he approached me quietly. There was no arrogance in his voice, only a hesitant attempt at conversation. "Mom, I know I hurt you," he whispered. "I didn't mean it. I don't know what to say." I studied him carefully. This was the first moment I had seen true vulnerability. The first moment where he realized that life doesn't bend to entitlement. "Then start by respecting me," I said softly. "Actions speak louder than words." He nodded, but I wasn't ready to fully forgive him. Forgiveness would take time and trust even longer. But I knew something essential had shifted. The first seeds of accountability had been planted. And in that moment, I finally felt the quiet power of a life reclaimed. I was no longer just a mother who had been hurt. I was a woman learning to rise, to protect herself, and to demand respect, lessons he would have to face for years to come. A few days later, I realized that reclaiming my life wasn't just about financial independence or physical distance. It was about facing the emotional storm he carried with him. My son wasn't just testing boundaries for power. He was testing whether I could break under the weight of guilt, manipulation, and anger. That morning, he confronted me again. His face was flushed, hands trembling. "Mom, you can't just leave me like this. I need you. I don't have anyone else." His voice cracked, oscillating between desperation and anger. I watched him carefully, feeling a mixture of sorrow and resolve. "You need me?" I asked softly. "You had me. You had my love, my care, my life. And what did you do with it?" He looked down, mumbling something unintelligible. I stepped closer, my voice calm but firm. "You humiliated me. You threw water in my face. You expected me to forgive, to pretend it never happened. I won't live like that. I won't let someone treat me as though my dignity is optional." For a moment, he seemed frozen, the realization slowly sinking in. His eyes darted around, avoiding mine, searching for some escape from accountability. But I didn't flinch, didn't step back, didn't offer comfort. "I'm not the person you can manipulate anymore," I continued. "You have a choice now. Change your actions. Show respect and earn your place in my life. Or lose it completely." His hands clenched into fists, but no words came. For the first time, I felt the power of silence. Sometimes, the strongest lesson comes not from shouting or punishing, but from unwavering presence and boundaries. That afternoon, I went out for a long walk, letting the cool breeze clear my mind. I reflected on the journey that had brought me here, the years of unconditional love that had been met with cruelty, the painful decision to leave my own home, and the quiet strength that had been born from heartbreak. I realized something important. Pain doesn't always weaken us. Sometimes it strengthens us, sharpens our resolve, and forces us to define the boundaries we never dared to set before. When I returned home, he was sitting quietly, not on the couch, not pacing the floor, just sitting, staring at the wall. The storm had passed for now, but the suspense lingered, the tension thick in the air, because I knew this wasn't the end. His understanding of consequences was still new, fragile, and untested. Over the next few days, subtle changes began to show. He asked permission instead of demanding, used polite tones instead of mocking ones, and for the first time, seemed hesitant to challenge my authority. But I knew that true respect isn't built in a few days. It's forged through consistent action over time. I also learned another lesson. Self-respect is not selfish. Walking away from abuse, asserting boundaries, and prioritizing one's dignity is not cruel. It's necessary. It's the cornerstone of resilience, strength, and survival. And as I watched him quietly clean the kitchen one evening without being asked, I felt a mix of relief and cautious hope. The path to accountability had begun, but the journey was far from over. Little did I know, the coming weeks would test both of us in ways neither of us expected, forcing him to face the full weight of his actions, and forcing me to confront the lingering pain I had carried for years. The tension in the apartment grew thick over the next week. He was quieter, yes, but there was a simmering resentment beneath that silence. I knew it was only a matter of time before it boiled over. Every glance he threw, every muttered word under his breath, carried the weight of unfinished anger and disbelief. One evening, I came home from work to find the apartment in disarray. Papers scattered, dishes half-washed, clothes strewn across the floor. My chest tightened. He hadn't even tried to hide it. It was a silent protest, a challenge. I took a deep breath and walked calmly into the kitchen. He was standing there, arms crossed, glaring at me. "You think you've won?" he asked, voice sharp. "You think walking away and taking everything will make me, what, respect you? Fear you? I'm your son." I looked at him steadily, my heart aching but my mind clear. "You're my son," I said slowly. "But respect isn't automatic. Respect is earned, and you've spent years throwing it away." His eyes narrowed. "You don't get to lecture me." "You left me! You abandoned me!" I shook my head. "No, I didn't abandon you. I left the toxicity behind. I left the environment that allowed you to disrespect and humiliate me without consequences. This was never about leaving you. It was about reclaiming my life." He stepped forward, face contorted with anger. "Reclaim your life? You think this is just about you? Do you know what it feels like to be left with nothing? To have someone take away everything you think you deserve?" I met his gaze unflinchingly. "Yes, I do. I've lived with the pain of betrayal for years, but I also know the difference between pain that teaches and pain that destroys. You're experiencing consequences. That's all this is." He clenched his fists, breathing heavily. "You think this will teach me? You think this will change me?" "It won't change you overnight," I said calmly. "It won't erase years of entitlement or arrogance. But it will teach you one undeniable truth. Actions have consequences, and no one, not even your mother, can shield you from them forever." For a long moment he didn't speak. Then he turned away, muttering something under his breath. I didn't follow him or engage further. Instead, I cleaned the kitchen, feeling the strange combination of exhaustion and relief. This confrontation, though painful, was necessary. That night, I lay in bed, reflecting on the lessons I had learned. Strength isn't always loud or violent. It's quiet, unwavering, and consistent. Forgiveness is not about excusing mistakes. It's about freeing yourself from carrying the weight of someone else's cruelty. And resilience isn't just about surviving hardship. It's about standing tall in its aftermath. I also realized that love doesn't mean tolerating abuse. It doesn't mean sacrificing your dignity for the comfort of someone else. True love, even for a child, sometimes requires tough choices, boundaries, and the courage to walk away when respect is denied. Little did I know this confrontation would be the turning point. The storm was far from over, but for the first time, I sensed the first flicker of accountability in him. It was fragile, barely visible, but it was there, and I clung to that hope as tightly as I clung to my own newfound strength. The following week, I began to notice subtle attempts at manipulation. He would approach me with a fake softness in his voice, trying to pierce the walls I had built around my heart. "Mom, I'm really sorry. Can we just talk? I don't want to fight." I studied him carefully. I knew this tactic. It was the same strategy he had used for years. Soft words hiding selfish intent. I let him speak, nodding politely, but I didn't give in. My silence became my weapon, my shield, and a mirror for him to see the consequences of his actions. He tried again the next morning, slipping notes under my door, each one filled with guilt-laden pleas and half-truths. "I was wrong, Mom. I'll do better. Please, just give me another chance." I read them, one by one, tears pricking my eyes, but I didn't respond. I knew that words alone could never undo the pain, the disrespect and the humiliation he had inflicted. Respect had to be earned, not begged for. Then came the night that tested me more than any other. I was in my living room reviewing my work when I heard the heavy footsteps behind me. He had followed me home after an argument he had with a friend, clearly hoping to find me vulnerable, hoping to manipulate my emotions once more. "Mom, I can't live like this," he shouted. "You're ruining my life. You're cruel." I turned slowly, my gaze steady, unwavering. "No, I am protecting my life. I am protecting my dignity. You're the one who chose cruelty, disrespect, and entitlement over love and respect. This isn't cruelty. This is accountability. He pounded his fists against the wall in frustration. You don't understand. You think leaving me without money, without comfort, will teach me? You're just punishing me. Punishment isn't my goal, I said calmly, moving closer but not too close. My goal is to teach you that actions have consequences, and that respect, honesty, and decency are not optional. He slumped onto the couch, exhausted, rage and shame warring across his face. For a long time we sat in silence. The tension was almost unbearable, but this was the point, the moment where the lesson begins to sink in. That night, as I lay in bed, I reflected on what I had learned through every confrontation, every tear, and every moment of frustration. Resilience isn't the absence of fear. It's the ability to stand firm in the face of it. Forgiveness doesn't mean returning to a place of pain. It means giving yourself freedom, and self-respect is priceless, a treasure that cannot be taken away by anyone, no matter how close they are to your heart. By morning, I knew one thing: the path ahead would be long, filled with challenges and setbacks. But for the first time, I felt certain of my strength. I had survived the storm, and I would continue to stand, teaching him, and perhaps myself, the true meaning of responsibility, respect and consequence. Little did I know, the next confrontation would push both of us to the edge, forcing him to face a reality he had never been prepared for, and forcing me to confront my deepest fears and courage. A week later, the tension reached a breaking point. He stormed into my apartment, slamming the door behind him with such force that the walls trembled. His face was red, his hands shaking, and I could see the storm raging in his eyes. This wasn't just anger anymore, it was desperation, mixed with the first sparks of guilt. "Mom, I can't take this anymore," he shouted, pacing the small living room. "You're destroying me. You don't care about me at all." I stayed calm, my voice quiet but firm. "I care about you enough to let you face the consequences of your actions. I care about you enough to stop letting you disrespect me." He stopped mid-step, staring at me in disbelief. You actually mean it? You'll just let me suffer?" "Yes," I said softly. "I'll let you face reality because you've never faced it before. And maybe now you'll finally understand why your choices matter." He slumped into the couch, burying his face in his hands. The room was silent except for his shaky breaths. I didn't approach him. I didn't comfort him. This was the moment he needed to truly see himself, to confront the consequences of his entitlement, arrogance, and cruelty. Hours passed, the sun dipping low outside the window, casting long shadows across the room. He finally looked up, eyes red and tired, guilt etched into every line of his face. "Mom, I never realized. I didn't understand how much I hurt you. How serious this was." I sat down across from him, keeping my distance but maintaining eye contact. "You needed to understand that respect is not given automatically. And love is not an excuse to treat someone cruelly. You have to earn it, just like everyone else in this world." He nodded, swallowing hard. I get it now. I see how wrong I was. I was selfish and I humiliated you. I can't believe Mom, I'm sorry." I felt a lump in my throat. This was the first time I had heard genuine remorse from him. The first time he truly recognized the weight of his actions. But I knew forgiveness wasn't instantaneous. It had to be earned through consistent change and genuine accountability. "I hear your words," I said carefully. "But words alone are not enough. Actions will show me whether you've truly learned your lesson. Until then, the boundaries remain. Until then, I am protecting myself, as I should have years ago." He remained silent, finally understanding the gravity of the situation. For the first time, he experienced what it felt like to have someone he loved and took for granted walk away, to have consequences he could not escape. That night, as I lay in bed, I realized something profound. Strength isn't about controlling others. It's about controlling yourself, standing firm and refusing to allow anyone to diminish your worth. And sometimes, the hardest love is the one that sets boundaries and lets life teach its lessons. No matter how painful, the storm had begun to settle. But the transformation was just starting, for both of us. He had begun to see himself in a way he never had, and I had reclaimed the peace I had long been denied. The next morning I woke up early. The sun filtered gently through the curtains, painting the room in gold and quiet. For the first time in a long while, the house felt still, not heavy, not tense, just still. I walked into the living room and saw him sitting there, his head bowed, eyes swollen from crying. The anger that had once fueled his defiance was gone. What remained was something far more human, regret. He didn't speak when I entered, and neither did I. There was a fragile peace in that silence, the kind that comes after a storm has finally broken and left nothing but calm air behind. Finally, he looked up, his voice barely a whisper. "Mom, I didn't sleep all night. I kept thinking about what you said, about how I treated you. I feel ashamed." I sat down slowly, my heart aching. But not out of anger this time, out of understanding. "Shame can be painful," I said softly, "but it's also the beginning of change. Don't run from it. Let it teach you something." He nodded, tears forming again. "I thought strength was about control, about always getting what I wanted. But you showed me that strength is being able to walk away, even when it hurts. I didn't get that before." I felt tears well up in my own eyes, though I tried to hold them back. For so long I had waited to hear something genuine from him, not excuses, not manipulation, but truth. And now, sitting across from me, I finally saw the boy I once raised peeking through the man he had become. "I'm not asking you to forgive me right away," he continued, voice trembling. "I just want you to know that I see it now. I see you, everything you've done, everything you've sacrificed. And I'm sorry. I made you feel small when you were the one holding everything together." I took a deep breath, letting the weight of his words settle. "I can forgive," I whispered. "But trust, that will take time. It's not about punishing you. It's about healing, both of us. You need to learn how to love without control. And I need to learn how to live without fear." He nodded slowly, wiping his tears. "I'll prove it, Mom. I'll show you I can change." And for the first time in years, I believed him, not because of his words, but because of the stillness in his eyes. That restless defiance, that arrogance, had faded into something softer, something real. When he stood up to leave, he hesitated at the door, glancing back. "Can I come by tomorrow? Maybe we can have breakfast together." A small smile tugged at my lips. "Yes," I said simply. "But this time you'll cook." He laughed weakly through his tears, and for the first time in years, that sound didn't hurt. After he left, I sat there for a long while, feeling the quiet hum of peace settle in my chest. Forgiveness was beginning, slowly, gently, like sunlight creeping through the clouds after a long, relentless storm. Days turned into weeks, and slowly, the rhythm of life began to shift. My son visited often, not out of obligation, but out of genuine care. He brought groceries, helped with chores, and sometimes just sat quietly beside me, talking about his day. The sharp edge in his tone was gone, replaced with humility and warmth. One Sunday morning, as we sat at the small wooden table by the window, he poured me a cup of tea. "I was thinking," he said softly, "about how easily we take people for granted, especially the ones who never stop giving." I looked at him, smiling faintly. "It's human nature, I suppose. We assume love is endless, like it will always be there no matter what we do. But even love needs respect to survive." He nodded, eyes glistening. "I learned that the hard way." There was a silence between us, not heavy, but filled with meaning. I sipped my tea, watching the sunlight fall across the table, and thought about the woman I had been before. Quiet, forgiving, and too afraid to demand respect. That woman had suffered in silence, believing love meant endurance. But I knew better now. Forgiveness didn't mean forgetting. It meant choosing peace over pain, growth over revenge. I hadn't walked away to punish him. I had walked away to save myself, and in a way to save him too. That night, as I lay in bed, I heard his laughter echo from the living room, genuine, carefree. It was a sound I hadn't heard since he was a child. My eyes filled with tears, not of sadness but of gratitude. We were healing, slowly but surely. Months passed. I began volunteering at a local shelter, sharing my story with women who had lost their voices in homes that no longer felt like homes. Many cried when I told them how I'd once stayed silent, how my son had thrown water on my face, and how I had finally walked away. But they also smiled when I told them how that walk changed everything, for both of us. Healing isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a quiet realization that you deserve better, that your silence has power, that walking away doesn't mean giving up. It means reclaiming your worth. And as for my son, he never became perfect, but he became honest. He still made mistakes, but he owned them. He apologized. He grew. And that, to me, was redemption. One evening, he hugged me tightly before leaving and whispered, "Thank you for not giving up on me, even when I gave up on you." I smiled, holding back tears. "I didn't give up," I said softly. "I just stepped back, so you could see the space I filled." When the door closed behind him, I looked out the window, watching the streetlights flicker to life. For the first time in years, I felt whole. Life had taught me that love without respect is hollow. Forgiveness without boundaries is weakness. And silence, when used wisely, can be the loudest statement of all. And that was my story of heartbreak, courage, and rebirth. So to anyone listening right now, remember this. Sometimes, walking away isn't the end of love. It's the beginning of self-respect. Thank you for watching this emotional story on Next Gen Stories. If this touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more real-life stories that speak to the soul. Until next time, stay strong, stay kind, and never forget your worth.